Hey folks, Quilly here, and welcome to another episode of Let's Play the Kerbal Space Program. And in the last episode, we had a wee bit of a glitch completing our mission to go into orbit and return with our probe, because I didn't quite retrograde aggressively enough, and we ended up being just outside of antenna range when it was time to deploy the parachutes, which meant I couldn't send the signal to the probe to deploy the parachute. I could have done a few things, like put in a delay on my flight computer and sent the command ahead of time, yada yada yada, but I have gone and just reflown that mission, as I said last time. Did exactly the same mission, except just burned more completely to slow down. In fact, I ended up landing like right over here, like almost right on top of the Kerbal Space Center, which was pretty impressive. Completed those contracts for some money, got some extra science as well, and I think in this episode, I would like to do our lunar flyby. So we do have a pod that we can fly in, but it seems appropriate that we may as well go ahead and use the actual Mark 1 command pod. It is a little bit lighter, so it seems like a decent idea to go ahead and pick that up. I don't think we'll need any of the other bits and pieces. And so my contracts I'm talking about, I have orbital survey of the moon. So high orbit, low orbit, but material study, magnetometer, orbital telescope. So, you know, mission to get some science from the moon there. We've got a moon flyby mission. Be in low moon space and do some sort of experiment while there. And then science data from space around the moon. Either way. So we should be able to complete 3 missions simultaneously if we do a lunar flyby, as well as we should be able to give our pilot a bunch of experience points. Now, as I've mentioned before, I can pull them up over here, I did set up some personal rules here. We are not going to do a scientist-only flight. Any flight that includes a Kerbal in it must have at least the one pilot, so we are going to go with that. That is, again, that's my probe craft from the last time. Do I want to keep this base here? Tell you what, let me just set that aside for now. Do I want to pick sub-assembly out of this? I suppose I will. Let's go ahead and create that. I'm just gonna call it, I'm just gonna have it be unnamed for now, and then we'll see if we're gonna, you know, we'll probably won't keep it around forever. So let's go ahead and clear this out. Don't save. And let's do this. So we are gonna start with the Mark 1 command pod, just because it does look the most reasonable. Now, we will want to return to Kerbin with our material bays, and in fact, I would like to, if at all possible, to have a pair of them. So we're going to go ahead and try that. It's going to be a bit of an odd shape, but I think it will be okay. I'm going to use 2 radial mounted parachutes. I'm going to make sure they're not drogues. And basically, this is what we're going to primarily return with over here. And I think that should be manageable. Now, a nice big question is... Science June. Oh, yes, that's right! Hold on. I forgot, we're using the universal storage mod over here, which is very handy. It lets you do some really cool positional stuff. If I stuck that on top there, actually I think we can stick it on the bottom, and I think that will be pretty happy. This science bay is just like an empty storage room. So if I go here, for example, I can go ahead and open those bay doors, and you can see here it's just an empty pod. If we go into the science category, though, we actually have wedges. This is a science junior wedge. It's the same thing as having that round science junior at the top. It fits in nicely. It's even got a wedge for the orbital telescope. That's interesting. I'm going to bring, because we don't have a scientist, I'm not going to be able to reset these. I'm going to bring 2 material lab wedges over here, so I can do hopefully a high moon and a low moon material bay, and we've got the mystery goo wedge as well, so we're going to use a pair of those as well. You do have to rotate, it doesn't auto snap properly, but there we go. So we got those. Now, of course, we are using the life support mod, so it is important for us to keep track of exactly how much life support material we're going to have with us here. How come? Oh, you know what I need? It's because I need to add the button. TAC life support right over here. There we go. So, our pod contains enough food, water, and oxygen for 3 days, which, if everything goes well, should be more than enough to do a just flyby of the moon. It takes about a day to get there and about a day to get back, and you spend a little bit of time just in just doing the actual loop around the moon. So assuming I don't screw anything up, that will be plenty. Electricity, we've got about 4 hours worth. Obviously, we'll need solar panels for that. I don't know if we'll need batteries, actually. because these pods do come with a lot more electrical charge than the default one, just because you do need the electricity to run the life support system. We might go ahead and slap on one extra battery, but really, I mean, even in when we're eclipsed by Kerbal, we're not going to be eclipsed for 4 hours over there, so that should be fine. If we do happen to run out of one of these in some fashion, food and water, the Kerbals can last for, what, like a couple of days, I think, without them, which is fine. And even oxygen, if you run out of them, the Kerbals don't die right away because they're still in their spacesuit, which I think has 6 hours of oxygen in there, so that should be a good amount of just extra coverage in there. So, the orbital telescope, I could try to jam it in there in some awkward fashion, but tell you what, let's go ahead and put on another quad core on here. We'll go ahead and make do with the orbital telescope wedge. We only need the one because we can reuse that, and then let me go ahead and throw on just the storage bays here. Even if I don't use them all, it'll just look better. So, something like that, and let me open the front one. Open the bay doors, Hal. And so we could, I mean, we've got extra oxygen, all kinds of things we can take. We're not going to do that. I'm going to throw in a thermometer in there. Let me turn off the snapping because then it'll actually position itself better. And go a thermometer. We don't need the seismic accelerator because you can only use that on the ground. We can take pressure data in space, even though it always tells us exactly the same thing. The magnometer boom has to extend. I wonder, does it fit properly there? Let's stick it on top. That'll be fine. And then I'll put the parachutes on the side over there. The altimetry sensor, we won't really be in a position to use that. So I think I'll just go ahead and, you know what, let's go ahead and put a battery in here. Here, we'll put in a Z400 battery, which is basically going to double the amount of electric charge that we've got in here. Just, you know, just in case anything crazy happens. Let me go ahead and put our parachute. We're going to use 2 of these. We do have a little bit of extra weight, so it's nice to have 2 of these chutes instead of just the one at the top. They should not overheat in that position. If I'm a little paranoid, though, and I am, I can put it a little bit higher. They'll be just a bit more shielded down there. And of course, speaking of shielding, we'll put down that over there. So this is what is going to be returning back into the atmosphere with us. And I think that should be pretty functional. We're actually bringing back a lot of the experiments that we don't need to bring back, but we'll save money if we can return them. So, let me go ahead and call this, this is going to be the lander, or not the lander one, this is going to be moon. Or just call it flyby one, because I might use it for something else later on. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and throw on our decoupler over here. And then we're going to build the stage that is actually going to be responsible for all our maneuverings in space. Probably even like leaving Kerbal orbit, going to the moon, and then on the return path from the moon, tweaking our route so that we come back into the atmosphere. We don't need a ton of fuel for that. I'm tempted to do that. I think the T400 with a Terrier engine is going to give us all the Delta V, 1800 Delta V, assuming we are successful in getting into orbit before having to make use of this. That should be plenty of juice over there. Now, we do need some ability to generate power, so let's go ahead and throw on some solar panels in here. Let's go with, the trio is probably fine, although there's something very nice and satisfying about a foursome. And even though, since this is going to be a manned capsule, we don't need a signal back to the KSC to control it, right? We don't need a radio communication like we do with the probe. However, I will go and throw on one of these reflectron dishes so that we have the option of sending data. Whatever data we can send multiple times and not have to bring home, we will have a dish here to be able to send it back to KSC, assuming that we have a signal when we want it. We'll cross our fingers on that. I think that's good. I think that's good for our space step over here. I don't think we need any extra reaction wheels or anything. We've got some reaction wheels built into the command pod. How much we got? The 5. That's not bad. A lot more than a probe core. So yeah, this should be more than fine without us going ahead and throwing this bad boy on. Basically, it's got a built-in small reaction wheel. So that's, I like that. Okay, I guess what we'll do is we'll put another stack decoupler here, and then we'll work on the stage that's actually supposed to get us into orbit in the first place. If I just do this and a swivel engine, how's my thrust weight looking? 1.86. And obviously we don't have enough delta V. So if I did go and stick on an extra one of these 800 fuel tanks, and then put that back on there, is this going to be so heavy? No, I do have enough thrust to weight that this will still be moving us. It did add a little bit of extra delta V, which is nice, and I think what I'm going to do is throw some, probably just some SRBs on the side. It's worth noting, I don't have the ability to use fuel pumps yet, so I can't drive fuel from the side stages into the central one. Can't do any asparagising, for example. Yeah, I'll see. Let's see. SRBs don't give you quite as much pure delta V as they do mostly just give you thrust to weight, but they are cheap. So if we do that, pull that down over here, how are we looking? Okay, our thrust to weight ratio is quite aggressive starting off, but I can always throttle down with this engine in the middle. In fact, I don't have to burn the engine at that time. I could go and just move it up here. Just use purely the SRBs until they burn off, and then switch over there. Ooh, except, of course, that the SRBs don't gimbal. They don't give me any steering whatsoever. You know what? I think I will have to go with a slightly more expensive solution. It's a little disappointing. But I think we'll have to put those and some more swivels on here, I suppose. Make sure everything starts at the same time. Yank that off. Bring it down a little further. Yeah, it's so annoying without the fuel pump. You don't get the same efficiency that you might be looking for. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to switch things around a wee bit. I'm going to do that. Build another stage here. And this one here, we're not even going to bother with the decouplers. Actually, let me go and just trash that. I'm just going to copy this and just glue on right there. So, stage 1. I have to break this up a bit. There we go. Those 3. And this stage. And that. I'm not getting the stats that I'm looking for here. $5,400 delta V. I think that is going to be fine. Thrust to weight is obviously fantastic here. Just checking these stage 4 and 3. This will give me a total of 3,500 delta V, basically getting into space with all this. Basically, but not quite. Let me go. Since we have some extra delta V, or thrust to weight at the bottom here, we're getting a bit tall. There we go, 5,900. That's more than enough. Our thrust to weight is good. These are all swivel engines, so our steering should be relatively good. Although being this tall, I will definitely put in just some little winglets at the bottom here, just for a little bit of extra stability. Like this. We're pretty aerodynamic at the top. I don't need any fairings whatsoever. I'm not over any of my limits in terms of my VAB or my launch pad. So I think that will be okay. Let's do a quick save here. Again, we're launching all 3 engines to start off with. We're using all this stage here. We don't have any radial decouplers or anything like that. It's just going to be all 3 engines burning simultaneously. Then we break that off. We use this stage over here to complete our ascent and to basically get us into orbit. And then this bad boy to send us on a return path from the moon. And since we don't really have to do any major maneuvers around the moon, this should be more than enough to get the job done, I'm pretty sure. Okay, let's make sure we've got the right Kerbal in here. So I have gone and renamed the Kerbals, and the way things work in KSB is when you change a Kerbal's name, it actually changes the profession. So we end up with somehow 3 scientists, and the person who used to be our pilot over here has also become a scientist. So Lamphair over here, or Lamphair maybe, you are going to be our pilot for this lunar mission. Let me save, and we are going to go ahead and launch this bad boy. With being so tall, I might actually be nicer to use a few launch stabilizers. Just over here, and then let's bring the whole thing up a little bit. And then make sure that these stabilizers disconnect right there as we light our engines. Okay, I think I'm going to be okay with that. For the launch to the moon, if you really want to minimize your flight time a wee bit, you could time your launch to be exactly right so that when you get in space and you're lined up and you're comfortable, you're ready to actually do your burn to aim straight at the moon. Orbiting around Kerbal does not take very long. It's not going to eat into our supplies very much, so I'm not going to be worried. Oops, I want to shrink that, pull that up, and well, I suppose we can keep our Contract Plus open here and try to keep in mind the various science I got to do. I've got all the science experiments. I've got to make sure to do the material study in high orbit and a telescope from low orbit. If I don't have a connection to the KSC and I can't transmit science, I'll have to make sure not to do a telescope in high orbit because I need to save room for the telescope to work in low. But other than that, we should be okay. I'm hoping to run any repeatable experiments in high Kerbal orbit along the way, but I have to make sure not to use my goo or my material bays because I should get more science from that when I'm in space around the moon. SAS turn on. We're going to go to full throttle. This will be a bit more of a manual flight because I don't have a probe core, so there's no flight computer on this one. I could, of course, have thrown a probe core on there, but, you know, let's do this. Okay. I think we can just activate. I'm not going to EVA here. No, thank you. The staging looks okay. As per my usual habit, I'm going to let my surface velocity hit about 100 meters per second, and then I'm going to start my gravity turn to the east. And unlike the last time we had a manned flight in this reload, I didn't rotate my craft, so it is indeed going to be the D key that I'm used to. We're going to be turning over that way, and I can probably go ahead and get that started. A little bit wobbly. I don't have any support struts. That is very, very, very true. That is going to make a bit of a difference in the wobble, at least until we get this first stage gone. This might make it a little tricky for me to do everything exactly like I want, because I'm mostly just going to have to use small things. I suppose I can hit caps lock here and get a little bit more fine control, and then turn it off. Okay, stage. All right, still about a third of the way to go, so that's fine. We're going to try to mostly keep ourselves within the prograde marker here. This is going to become a lot easier to maneuver once we drop this very heavy rear end here. Because when we do our steering, I mean, it's mostly gimbaling here and a little bit of reaction wheels, and then everything sort of fights. Not too worried about throttling down. We'll get a little bit of aerodynamic effects, but not too much. Let me turn caps lock back on. Try to make this a little bit more reasonable. And we're about to drop that first stage. Okay. And go. Good. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do my proper sort of 45-degree aim over here now. And in fact, I can probably turn a little bit more aggressively than this at this point. Especially since I'm not worried about having a very, very flat gravity turn here and losing connection to the KSC, because it's not particularly relevant. I could, at this juncture, I suppose, go ahead and activate this, or at least set a target. There's no harm. Target mission control whenever possible. That's going to be fine. We might bounce it off another satellite, but for now, that's okay. I could turn this on, but there's no reason to. May as well save the power. Although we're generating infinite power right now because we're burning. We've got our, what you call it? Alternator on this engine, so it can generate power for us. Okay, at this point, I'm very comfortable, I think, going for a full horizontal little aim over there. And our apoapsis continues to grow. By doing it this way, it'll still grow our apoapsis, but we're starting to work our circularization a wee bit. I could have done it a bit more aggressively there, but it's still early in our space program. We don't have all the bits and pieces that we might be comfortable with, and the lack of struts, especially on the earlier phase, was a little rough. But we're looking okay now. Okay, keep burning this way. Time to apoapsis is growing, and that is okay. Again, I'll try to bring this to about 100. I'll cut the engines. We'll finish the circularization. We're actually about to cross into space right now, so that ain't bad at all. And what was very nice is we haven't had to use our carrier at all. We should actually be able to use the stage to even do to start us on our way to the moon. Actually, there should be just a bit of fuel left in the tank for that. Okay, we are now in space. So let me go ahead and run the magnetometer scan over here because it is reusable. We'll transmit it back. We've got a connection, which is great. We'll do a crew report, transmit that. I suppose I can go ahead and do the EVA as well. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. EVA report. EVA report. We're going to keep it. We're going to board because we can't transmit personally. But now I should be able to review the stored data and transmit it because we do apparently still have a connection to the KSC here at this point. Very good. I don't know if it matters. I don't know if it's physics enabled, but I will go ahead and toggle all that off. Maybe save a little bit of electricity. We are burning some electrical charge, as you can see here. The antennas themselves use quite a bit. And speaking of, hey, let's go ahead and extend these panels. Now, forgetting to extend the panels is not quite as dire when you've got a manned flight than when you're a pure probe one, because you can always EVA and manually extend your solar panels. But now we've got that. As long as we are in the sun, we will make plenty of power. And obviously, if power starts to be a concern, I can just turn off the dish as well. Dish is what's using quite a bit of our juice. So I can't lock the prograde or anything because we're on pure manual flight, which doesn't really make any sense for space programs. And I will use more computerized stuff for our flights at some point in the future, certainly. Do I have, out of curiosity... yeah, see, I haven't unlocked the smartass yet. We will at some point get the smartass tech unlocked, or I can put a probe core on here and then use the flight computer. Assuming you can only use the flight computer, though, if I actually have a connection back to the KSC. So then I'm basically flying it like a probe. All right, we've got 1 minute to apoapsis. I think I can fast forward a little bit more than that, because we really don't have a lot of work to circularize, even though it's a bit of a heavy ship. There we go. 20 seconds left. Might be cutting it a bit short, but that's fine. And... go for burn. Just try to hold it roughly prograde there. And because the time to apoapsis is growing, it's a good sign that I could have waited a while before starting my circularization burn. But if we raise our apoapsis here, it's not the end of the world, because we're going to have to do, there we go, we're going to have to do a fair amount of burning to get to the moon at some point. Speaking of the moon, oh, I just missed it. Look at that. It just rose a little while ago. I probably could have done a bit different of a burn at some point. Turn off the SAS. And just accelerate, deaccelerate, just to freeze the motion. We're going to go ahead and do a crew report. We're going to send it back. Ah, we cannot transmit right now. We do not have a signal. Question. And neither does the SAT-1. Okay. The SAT-1 should be set to have one satellite pointed to the KSC and one to the active ship. But right now, everything is on the wrong side, so that's no good. So what I have to do is just hold on to my experimental data right now and then ship it out a little bit later. Which one of these pods? So Mystery Goo, Material Bay, Mystery Goo. So is it right at the front by the door here? Oh, that's all Material Bays. Batteries and stuff in there. Actually, I can open this one. How come I can't? There we go. Open these bay doors. Because that way I'll be able to poke on these experiments and transmit them when I get a signal again. What else we got? That's just the science bay. Where's the actual, which one's my telescope one? Ah, right there. Okay. So to the left of the open door is this, because we... oh, we can toggle the shutter on this one? Oh, how cool is that? Answer. Super cool. Look at that. Okay, and that was just 2 mystery goos, and yeah, all right, good. Because yeah, what I'll have to do when we do get a signal again, I think I'll have to right-click on the experiments to send them the data so that I can use them again. Anyway, at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to wait until we've completed our first orbit over here to right around here. We're going to wait for the moon rise, and then we are going to go ahead and do a burn. Do I have patch conics tracking? I don't think so. You know what? Hang on a sec. We got to go back to the KSC. I think we have to upgrade our tracking station. I don't need maneuver nodes, but I would like some patch conics so that we can get some previews about exactly what is going to happen here. Oh, we've got enough science, too, for something. There we go. Upgrade that. And you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity to go ahead and put a cut in here and say thank you very much for watching. In the next episode, we will be continuing our flight to the moon, just a lunar flyby. And we're going to collect a bunch of science along the way and complete a bunch of quests. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.